Mika Brezinksi and Joe Scarborough from MSNBC's Morning Joe pissed a ton of people off when they took a private meeting at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump. And while I do understand that it might feel a bit weird for these two hosts to take an off-the-record meeting like that, especially since they have been such harsh critics, I wanted to take a look at these things with a little bit more of an open mind. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I definitely wanted to give a little bit more time before I drew any solid conclusions. Because the way it's shaping up right now, it appears that there are two camps emerging. On the one side, you've got people that agree that journalists and commentators should be taking these types of meetings with people like Donald Trump. And on the other hand, you have people that are feeling a bit betrayed because Joe and Mika have spent much of their time calling out Donald Trump for the fascist that he is. And now it feels like they're playing buddy-buddy with him now that he was elected president. So let's go ahead and take a look at what exactly they said, and then we will go from there.
Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was tearful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
So there are many people out there that are saying that you shouldn't be taking these types of meetings because Donald Trump is an existential threat to this country. And I'm not sure that I agree with that approach. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with opening these lines of communications back up. I only think it's going to become an issue if they try to normalize or soften Donald Trump's image. Because Joe and Mika have rightly called Donald Trump out for the fascist that he is. And they have said that, yes, he is a threat to democracy. And so if those types of criticisms are nowhere to be found moving forward, I would have a huge problem with that. And I think most people would, and the trust in mainstream media would just fall further. So I think it's very important that they continue with their harsh criticisms, or people are not going to take them seriously. But I think it's too soon to tell whether or not that's how this relationship is going to shape up. But let's go ahead and see if they provide any more details about how they expect things will look moving forward.
They said, listen, we're open to working with the incoming president if the incoming president is open to working with us.
Yeah, the question is, though, how do we get there? Hyperbole and personal attacks will not work. My hair on fire doesn't work. We've all seen that. What also does not work is threatening political opponents with arrest, harassment, and even jail. That is a failed path. Recent history has proven that impeachments and trials turn those on trial into political martyrs and only make them more popular with the American people. Just ask Bill Clinton and Donald Trump.
Now, I'm not sure that I agree that just because somebody gets impeached that they are somehow wildly popular among the American people. I don't really buy that. But I am curious what she means by name-calling and my hair on fire isn't going to work. What exactly is that going to look like? There's one world where, these lines of communication open back up and Joe and Mika are there and they are providing adequate pushback to Donald Trump when it needs to be provided. And there's another world where they just kind of soften his image and they try to normalize his authoritarian impulses or his fascistic behaviors. And that could be a huge, huge issue. And I'm also curious if they are more thinking about Donald Trump's power to come after them and Donald Trump seeking retribution against them because they have been such harsh critics. Because Brian Stelter recently just published this article which kind of leans in that direction. It says Morning Joe meeting with Trump was driven by fears of retribution from incoming administration, sources say. This could be a problem. Let's go ahead and take a gander at two of these paragraphs really quick. Okay. So according to two sources with direct knowledge of the matter, Scarborough and Brezinksi were credibly concerned that they could face government and legal harassment from the incoming Trump administration. Knowing that Trump has threatened retribution against his perceived political opponents, and that Trump has promoted lies about Scarborough and Brezinksi in the past, the MSNBC hosts decided to reach out to the president-elect, the sources told CNN. Now, this is not inherently bad. I think that Joe and Mika are very credibly concerned that Donald Trump could come after them. But it will really come down to how they are going to handle this relationship moving forward. If they're not going to provide him any tough questions and they're just going to soften his image and let him go about and be Donald Trump, that's going to be an issue for a ton of people. But if they're just opening these lines of communications back up and they are going to be a voice in the room that can provide adequate pushback, even though they still have these credible fears, that is going to be a better world to live in. We don't want to see Joe and Mika capitulate to Donald Trump just because he's a wannabe authoritarian. I think that would be a huge, huge issue, and we would be here every step of the way to call them out for it. So as I said before, I think only time will tell whether or not there is something more substantial to criticize here. And I do understand the criticism that, it does sound like they are softening his image in this piece that we are watching, but I just don't think we have enough information at this time, and they have promised that they are still going to provide pushback against Trump when it is needed.
As for us, we also let him know that we will continue to speak truth to power and push back hard when called for, as we have with all presidents.
Don't be mistaken. We're not here to defend or normalize Donald Trump. We're here to report on him and to hopefully provide you insights that are going to better equip all of us in understanding these deeply unsettling times.
Now, I hope they are telling the truth. And until they give me a reason to believe that that is not the case, I will believe them. I think that is more than reasonable. And I just hope they stand by their principles and they call Donald Trump out for all his fascistic tendencies and his authoritarian impulses, because that is who Donald Trump is. If we see them capitulate and cower just because they are scared of retribution, we're going to call them out for it. And like I said before, there are two camps on how we should react to this Joe and Mika situation. On the one hand, you have people that agree that these are the types of meetings that they should be taking. And on the other hand, you've got people who are feeling a little bit betrayed. So let's go ahead and listen to Alyssa Farah Griffin explain to us why she agrees that Morning Joe should engage in these conversations.
So I actually think it was the right thing to do. And I've heard a lot of folks on the left coming after Joe and Mika saying, don't normalize him. Well, 75 million plus American voters normalized Donald Trump by making him President-elect Donald Trump. In this notion that if sort of the resistance who opposes him stayed in their safe bubbles, sat on their hands and just complained about him for 4 years, that would have a bigger impact than sitting down. I talked to Mika, actually. They met with him for over 90 minutes. They raised very valid concerns. They both see themselves as opinion journalists who want to actually be able to engage the person that they talk about every day, actually be able to raise issues with them when they're concerned. And in the same way that I thought it was right for Joe Biden to meet with him, and that I think it's right for presidents to meet with foreign adversaries to try to find diplomatic relations and ways to bring people together and solve problems, this is absolutely the right thing. I would sit down with Donald Trump. I would interview Donald Trump. And I'll go a step further. I hope good people work for him. We need to stop demonizing people because they supported a man who just became president of the United States. We should hope good people are around him and smart journalists are challenging him.
So I definitely do not agree that just because half of America voted Donald Trump in for a second term, that all of a sudden just normalizes Donald Trump. I think we need to be here every step of the way, calling out all of his terrible behavior, all of his anti-democratic tendencies. So I definitely don't agree with Alyssa on that. But what I do agree with her on is that it does nobody any good if we are just sitting in our own echo chambers or our bubbles and complaining to one another about our concerns about the other side. We should be reaching out across the aisle, and we should have some cross-pollination between the two ideologies that are prevalent in our country. I don't think it is good for anybody for us to just lob stones and never interact with other people, because then there's no chance for any bipartisanship or working together. So I definitely agree with her there. And I think it's something that we should strive for as we move forward. We want to be talking to the other side, and we should definitely be hoping that Donald Trump does good for this country, even though we are fairly confident that he's only going to be looking out for himself. And let's go ahead and take a look at the other side of this argument from, Jeff Jarvis, who says that, they kind of betrayed their coworkers at MSNBC. Let's go ahead and take a look.
There was no good reason to go and pay obeisance in advance. Nothing journalistic came out of this visit. They came and it was all off the record. Oh, we're going to ask him for an interview. Well, obviously Trump's going to want the airtime. That's fine. No value came. And they went on bended knee. And it was, I think, in the end, a betrayal of the staff at MSNBC who do still criticize Donald Trump, who now feel that they are in some jeopardy because of that, because he has threatened the press. And so I think that it was a bad moment for Joe and Mika.
So this is another criticism that I've heard. People are trying to compare this to how the Washington Post didn't want to endorse anybody this cycle, and they call it obeying in advance. I understand that would never be a good thing to do to somebody who wants to be a fascist or an authoritarian leader, but I don't think we have enough information to say that is what Joe and Mika did. He tried to say that they went there on bended knee, but I don't think we have enough evidence to say that is the case. I do understand the criticism that it feels bad that now they are going and having private meetings. I think maybe if they had an on-the-record meeting where we could analyze what was said, I think that would have gone over a bit smoother with some of their critics, and I would have probably advocated for that. But I don't think we have enough information right now to say 100% that they are just bending the knee and they're going to normalize Donald Trump and all of his fascistic behavior. I just don't think we're there yet. So I would say that we should give it a little bit more time. We should see how this relationship develops, and we should hold Joe and Mika accountable and make sure that they are challenging Donald Trump just like we have seen them do in the past. And if they aren't doing that, we need to call them out for it. And I think that is the best that we can do for right now. I don't think it is fair to throw all these stones and completely write these guys off when they haven't shown us enough to make that criticism valid. That's all I'm saying. So I think we should reserve judgment for now, give it a little bit of time, and then see how things play out. And we'll be here every step of the way to call them out if they mess up. But I'll leave it there. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I would very much appreciate your support. If you want to see an elected Republican basically begging to be ruled by a dictator, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.